The boy asked the wheelwright if he could be his father. The wheelwright said he already was. The boy's name was Shep. He was 9 years old, and he had no father. Or rather, he had a father who existed somewhere in the geography of the country, but who did not exist in the geography of the boy's life. The geography of the boy's life being a rented cottage in Bonner, Missouri, where Shep lived with his mother, Nell, who was 32 years old, and who had been raising Shep alone since Shep was 2, which was the year Shep's father, a man named Dale Arledge, had walked off the farm and into the anonymous West, and had not come back. And the not coming back was the absence, and the absence was the shape of the family, the shape being 2 instead of 3. Nell worked at the dry goods store on Main Street. She measured bolts of calico and weighed nails and counted buttons into paper sacks, and the counting was the living, and the living was the provision, and the provision was sufficient but not generous. Sufficient meaning that Shep had shoes and food and a roof, and not generous, meaning that the shoes were resold twice, and the food was beans more often than beef, and the roof leaked in the northeast corner when the spring rains came, and the leaking was the reminder that sufficiency is not the same as security, and security was the thing Nell wanted for Shep, and wanting for Shep was the engine that drove Nell through every day of buttons and nails and calico. Shep was a boy who looked for fathers. He looked for them the way a person with a missing tooth runs their tongue over the gap. Constantly, involuntarily, the looking a reflex rather than a decision, the reflex produced by the absence that was Dale-shaped, and that could be filled by anyone who was the right shape. And the right shape was a man who paid attention to Shep, and paying attention was the thing Shep wanted more than anything, because attention from a man was the thing he had never had, and the never having was the hunger. The wheelwright's name was Odell Marsh. He was 37 years old. He made wheels and he repaired wagons and he did the work that a wheelwright does in a small Missouri river town, which is the work of keeping things rolling, and rolling is the metaphor for continuing, and continuing is what Odell did. He continued, day after day, in his shop on Front Street, making wheels out of hickory and ash and iron, the making a solitary occupation that suited a solitary man. He was not married. He had not been married. The not been married was not a choice, but a circumstance. The circumstance of a man who had been raised by a father who was cruel, and who had learned from the cruelty that fatherhood was dangerous. Dangerous, because a cruel man can damage a child the way a bad axle can damage a wheel. And the damage is permanent, and the permanent was the fear, and the fear was the reason Odell had not married, because marrying might produce children, and children might be damaged by whatever cruelty had been passed down from his father, and the passing down was the terror. Odell lived above the shop. He lived in 2 rooms that smelled of hickory shavings and linseed oil, smelling the atmosphere of a life organized around a single activity. The activity, the work the identity. He ate his meals at the counter of Paulson's restaurant, where he ordered the same thing every evening, beef stew and cornbread and coffee. And the sameness was the routine, and the routine was the structure that solitary men build to replace the structure that families provide, and the replacing was the substitution. And the substitution was adequate but not nourishing, adequate the way a meal is adequate when it fills the stomach, but does not fill the kitchen with conversation. And conversation was the thing Odell's evenings lacked, and the lacking was the loneliness, and the loneliness was the price of the fear. Shep came to the shop in June. He came because Shep went everywhere in Bonner. Shep was a wanderer, the wandering, the searching, the looking for fathers that was the reflex, and the reflex brought him to Front Street, and Front Street brought him to the wheelwright's shop, and the shop brought him to Odell, and Odell was the shape. "What are you making?" Shep said. He said it from the doorway. The doorway, the threshold that children know instinctively is the boundary between acceptable presence and intrusion. And Shep stood at the threshold because standing at the threshold is the asking of permission. And permission was what Shep needed. And needing was what Shep did. "I am making a wheel," Odell said. He said it without looking up, because not looking up was the habit of a man who works with his hands, and whose hands require his eyes, and whose eyes cannot be spared for doorways. And the not looking up was not rejection. The not looking up was concentration, and concentration is the compliment that a craftsman pays to his work. Can I watch? You can watch. Shep watched. He watched from the doorway for the first day, and from inside the shop for the second day, and from beside the workbench on the third day. The progression, the approach, the trust building that children do instinctively. The instinct saying, move closer slowly, observe the response, and if the response is not hostile, move closer still, and the response was not hostile. The response was the not looking up that was the concentration, and the concentration was the permission, and the permission was sufficient. By the fourth day, Shep was helping. The helping was small, holding a spoke while Odell fitted it into the hub, handing tools when asked, sweeping shavings from the floor. And the small helping was the big thing, because helping is the participation that converts watching into belonging, and belonging was the thing Shep was constructing. One visit at a time, one spoke at a time. Nell noticed. Nell noticed because mothers notice, and mothers notice with the particular attention of a parent who has been sole guardian for 7 years, and who has developed the radar that sole guardians develop, the radar that detects changes in a child's behavior, the way a barometer detects changes in pressure. The change was this: Shep was happy. Shep was happy in a way that was different from the happy he had been before. The before happy being the contentment of a child who has adjusted to his circumstance, and the new happy being the joy of a child who has found something, and the found something was visible in Shep's face. In the animation that appeared when he talked about the Wheelwright's shop, in the vocabulary he was acquiring, hub, spoke, fellow, tire. The vocabulary, the evidence of learning, and learning is the evidence of engagement, and engagement is the evidence of attachment. She went to the shop. She went because she needed to see the man her son was attaching to, because attachment is the thing that can produce joy, and can also produce devastation, and the also producing is the danger, and danger requires assessment, and assessment requires seeing. She saw Odell. She saw him at the workbench with Shep beside him, Shep holding a fellow, while Odell fitted it to the spokes, the holding a partnership, the partnership visible in the way Shep's hands were positioned, carefully, with the particular care that a child applies when entrusted with something important, and the entrusting was the trust, and the trust was the relationship, and the relationship was the thing Nell had come to assess. You are the boy's mother, Odell said. He said it looking up from the workbench, looking up for the first time in Shep's experience. The looking up, the acknowledgement that the doorway contained something that required his eyes, and the something was Nell, and Nell was worth looking up for. I am the boy's mother. His name is Shep. He has been coming to your shop every day for a week. I wanted to see where he goes. He comes here, he watches, he helps. He holds spokes and sweeps shavings and asks questions. And the questions are good questions. The questions of a boy who wants to understand how things are made. And wanting to understand is the quality I admire most in a person of any age. Nell looked at Odell. She looked at him with the assessment that 7 years of sole parenting had produced. The assessment that is not suspicious but careful. The careful of a woman who has been left once, and who cannot afford to have her son be left. And the cannot afford is the protection, and the protection is the looking. She did not find danger. She found a wheelwright with hickory shavings in his hair, and calluses on his hands, and the particular gentleness that large, quiet men sometimes possess. The gentleness that is not weakness, but restraint, the restraint of strength, that knows its own power, and that moderates itself around small things. And Shep was a small thing, and the moderating was visible. He may continue coming, Nell said. He may continue if you are willing, and if the continuing does not impose. The continuing does not impose. The continuing is the opposite of imposing. The continuing is the company, and company is the thing I did not know I needed until a 9-year-old stood in my doorway and asked what I was making. Nell began stopping by the shop. She stopped by in the mornings before the dry goods store opened, bringing coffee in a tin pail, bringing the excuse the reason to come, and the reason to come was the wanting to see, and the wanting to see was the beginning of the thing that was separate from Shep's thing. The separate thing being the thing between Nell and Odell, the thing that was not yet named, because naming requires acknowledgement, and acknowledgement requires courage, and courage requires time, and time was what the summer was providing, one morning at a time, one tin pail of coffee at a time. Odell accepted the coffee. He accepted it the way he accepted Shep's presence, without ceremony, without excessive gratitude, with the simple acknowledgement that the thing being offered was welcome, and the welcome was the opening, and the opening was the door through which Nell entered, not the doorway of the shop, but the doorway of Odell's life, the life that had been organized around solitude, and that was reorganizing itself around company, and the reorganizing was the transformation, and the transformation was quiet, the way all real transformations are quiet. The summer continued. Shep came every day. He came and he watched and he helped and he learned, and the learning was the transformation of a boy who had been looking for a father into a boy who was finding one, the finding not sudden but gradual, the way a wheel is built, one spoke at a time, each spoke fitted into the hub, each spoke connecting the center to the center being the relationship, and the rim being the world, and the spokes were the daily visits and the daily helping, and the daily presence, that builds a thing that rolls. Odell changed too. The changing was the surprise that a man who feared fatherhood because of his own father could feel the fear dissolving in the presence of a boy who held spokes carefully and asked good questions. The dissolving was the evidence that the fear was wrong, the fear that said you will be cruel because your father was cruel. And the wrongness was demonstrated daily by the fact that Odell was not cruel. Odell was patient and careful and present is the thing that cruel fathers are not. And the not being was the proof, and the proof was Shep's happiness. And Shep's happiness was the evidence that the passing down had not occurred, that cruelty is not genetic, that the son is not the father, and the not being is the freedom. In September, Shep asked the question. He asked it on a Tuesday, at the workbench, while Odell was fitting an iron tire to a completed wheel, the fitting requiring heat and precision, and the particular attention that critical operations demand. And Shep asked the question during the critical operation, because children ask the most important questions during the most ordinary moments, because ordinary moments are the moments when the guards are down, and the guards being down is the condition for honesty. "Can you be my father?" Shep said. Odell stopped. The stopping was the moment when the question enters the air, and the air changes, the way the air changes when a door opens in a sealed room, the change being the admission of something new, and the new was the question, and the question was the most important question Shep had ever asked. Odell set down the hammer. He set it down because the hammer was not the tool required for this moment. The tool required was words, and words were harder than hammers, and harder is what this moment demanded. "I already am," Odell said. "I have been your father since the day you asked what I was making. I have been your father every day you stood in that doorway, and every day you held a spoke, and every day you swept shavings from the floor. The being your father is not the question. The being your father is the fact, and the fact began in June, and the fact has been growing the way a wheel grows, one spoke at a time." Shep did not cry. Shep smiled. The smile was the answer to the answer that says, I knew before I asked. I asked because the knowing needed to be said, and the said is the confirmed, and the confirmed is the real. Nell came to the shop that evening. She came because Shep had told her, and the telling had been accompanied by the smile that was different from all previous smiles, the smile that was the belonging smile, the smile of a boy who has found the thing he was looking for. She found Odell at the workbench clean, the tools put away, the day's work done, and the doneness, the evening, and the evening the quiet, and the quiet the space in which important things are said. "He told me what you said," Nell said. "I said what is true. I am his father. Not by blood and not by law, but by the thing that is more important than blood and law, which is presence. And presence is what I have given and what I will continue to give. You are not afraid?" Odell understood the question. The question was about his own father, about the cruelty, about the fear of passing down. Nell knew. Nell knew because Bonner is a small town, and small towns know, and the knowing was the reason for the question. I was afraid. I was afraid for 37 years. I was afraid that I would be my father, that the cruelty was in me, that the in me would emerge when a child was near. Shep proved that the fear was wrong. Shep proved it by being happy in my presence. And happiness in a child's presence is the evidence of gentleness. And gentleness is not the quality my father had, and the not having is the proof that the passing down did not occur. Nell sat on the bench by the door. She sat, and she looked at the shop, the clean floor, the ordered tools, the finished wheel leaning against the wall, the wheel that Shep had helped build. And the looking was the seeing of a place where her son had been fathered by a man who made wheels, a man who understood that wheels are built one spoke at a time and that families are built the same way. Thank you, Nell said. The thanking is mine. The thanking is for Shep. Shep gave me the thing I was afraid to want, which is fatherhood. And fatherhood is the wheel I never knew I could build. Nell smiled. The smile was the beginning of the thing that Shep had started, the thing that a 9-year-old had built by standing in a doorway and asking, "What are you making?" And the asking was the first spoke, and the first spoke was the family, and the family was being built, one spoke at a time, by a wheelwright and a mother, and a boy who had found his father in a shop on Front Street in Bonner, Missouri.